It was in November of 1975 of my sophomore year in college. So, I was 18. I graduated early from high school. I was graduated from high school at 17. So I was still 18 as a sophomore, although I was going to turn 18 in December 24th. That's my birthday. But the Northern Open was in November, mid-November of 1975. And prior to that, maybe 3 weeks prior to that, my coach, Dwayne Clevin, head wrestling coach at Wisconsin, told me that, Lee, it appears like Dan Gable has entered the Northern Open at your weight, and I think you should cut down to 150. He said it almost like it was something I was going to think on my own to do, because he was like, it was like letting me know. It's almost like letting someone know that,
can't win.
Yeah, you're not gonna win. You're an airline pilot and you're gonna go fly today. Well, the forecast is gonna be really, really bad. So you shouldn't go today. You should go tomorrow or something. Yeah. So he was just telling me that so that I would say, oh my gosh, I better cut down to 50 or something. The previous year I wrestled 150, and I think I never said this before. I think he wanted me to be at 150 my sophomore year. And I kind of thought maybe I would too. When I ended my freshman year, I was 150. I cut hard to make it, but back in those days, we cut weight. So, right. So now we start my sophomore year, first tournament, I'm going 58. It was early in the season. He didn't say much about it, but now, although he did say that he wanted me to go 50, and I said, no, I'm going to go 58 this tournament. So now he comes to me, Lee, you know what? Looks like you're going to have to go 50 now, Yeah,
now it's time.
Yeah, now it's time. Dan Gable's entered you at 158. And I was thinking, I don't want to go 150. That was my first thought, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to wrestle. Yeah. The way I explain it is like if you were a great pitcher, even now in 2022, if you could go back in time and pitch against Babe Ruth, wouldn't that be pretty cool just to see? And so that's the way I looked at it. Like, it wasn't, and I was at his camp, as you know, that kind of ties the story together. He was the catalyst that showed me what a champion looked like. After a 500 season, after my sophomore year in high school, I wrestled on the freshman team, did not make the varsity as a freshman. My sophomore year, I had 11 wins, 8 losses, 3 ties season. My coach, Richard Deppenbrock, took me and maybe 2 other wrestlers to a wrestling camp in Ohio, and Dan Gable was there. That was the summer of 1972. It all ties together.
Wow. 3 years later, you're facing the man.
Yes. Yeah, it was a summer. And so he was there making he was there as the head clinician prior to going over to Munich, and that was a big deal. His workout partners were Ben and John Peterson, who also made the Olympic team. Yeah. It was a stellar wrestling camp. The premier wrestling coaches of that era were there. Stan Abel, coach of Oklahoma University. Harold Nichols, who was Gable's coach from Iowa State, was there, and Jerry Stanley, who was an assistant coach. Anyway, so I'm around all this greatness. There were some state champions there from the state of Ohio. I studied the sport. Ethan Reeves, we're friends to this day. He was the defending state champion. He won the state championship that year. My sophomore year, I watched him. Well, I didn't go to the state tournament, but I know from reading the publications that he won the state tournament. He was there. Jim Humphrey was there, a name you might remember. Jim Humphrey was older than me, but he was there as one of the clinicians. So anyway, when I was at that camp, I worked out with Ethan Reeves. I worked out with Jim Humphrey. I worked out with all the champs that were there, because I looked, and then when Dan Gable needed a drill partner to teach the wrestling moves to, who do you think his drill partner was?
Yeah, you. Yeah.
Because I chose that. He didn't choose me.
Oh wow, you volunteered.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, and when I talk to people, when I give motivational talks, things like that, I talk about how when you want something, you can't be embarrassed. You always put yourself in the position to get chosen. Yeah. And people wonder, well, why is this person always winning? Whether it's business, sport, whatever it is, in life, whatever, they're putting themselves in the position to win.
Right.
It doesn't mean you win all the time. It's like Michael Jordan talks about all the shots he missed, right? We know that quote. We go, I didn't realize he shot that many times. But each time he let the ball go, wasn't he putting himself in a position to win, right? He was taking the shot, at least, to put himself in the position to win.
Right.
He got better to where he started making more of those shots. So I wasn't going to let that opportunity go by. You've been at camps. We just before this podcast, you talked about being at a camp. Think about the times you've been sitting with 100 campers and you're watching what's going on. It's not the same.
No.
Think about the times you've been at seminars or whatever, whether it's business, that you didn't have a great seat and you wish, I wish I could be up a little bit closer. Or you've been at a concert, right?
Right.
Aren't the best seats front row, right? You know, so that's the mentality I had. And so right when he was posturing to, you know, when I could see he was going to need somebody, I stood up. Standing right next to him, okay, I guess I'll use this guy, you know?
Yeah.
Awkward. I've only been wrestling one varsity year and had just an average season. I got hurt part of the year, partly because I didn't know what I was doing. And so now, and I poked him in the eye once because I didn't know I mean, it was crazy. It was like, he doesn't remember it. Think about that. The most significant time in my life that created the greatest impact, he doesn't even remember. And I've had people say that to me even, you know, not that I'm great or anything, but people will say,
no, you've certainly made an impact in several lives. Yeah.
And so you don't remember everything, but he didn't remember that. So when he was teaching the moves, when he was doing things, I just thought I would learn everything much better. He looked massive to me, you know. His arms looked huge. The cuts in his arms, everything in my mind was just exaggerated. And then the camp was, we stayed in cabins. It was in Logan, Ohio. It was Camp Otterbein was the name of it. And the cabin that I stayed in, I knew the cabin that he stayed in. It was a wooded type of camp. And I noticed he was getting up early in the morning to go run. So when I noticed that, I would get up early to just watch him. He would leave and go running up this trail. It was like, you know, kind of a gravel road. And I would just wait until he came back and watch him. He didn't know I was watching him. And so he came back all sweaty. I mean, drenched. So my mind it allowed my mind to imagine what he must have done to get that sweaty. I didn't care about going to breakfast. And then after the sessions when he was teaching, he would then go get his workout with his workout partners. So the rest of the campers would go to lunch. I would sit and watch him. I didn't care about lunch. I just watched him. So that's the difference. It's those little nuances that made all the difference. It made 100% of the difference. So then when it was just a 5-day camp, you know? So then I go back from the camp and I just duplicated everything that I saw him doing. I saw him, the way he trained, it was really intense. I'll just tell this a little bit too. I've never told this before, I don't think, but the second day when he showed up, you know, to teach, he had a black eye, and I knew it was and I was a little embarrassed, you know.
Right.
And so I didn't really stand up right away. I was kind of like, not hiding, and he said, "Where's that kid I was going with yesterday?" I want to, you know, so he wanted to, you know, whatever. It wasn't anything significant, but so that's the backstory to all that. So then he talks about, at least his coaches, Harold Nichols, everyone, the media, which was print back then, amateur wrestling news that came out once every 3 months.
Yeah.
They had created the story that Russia, back then it was the Soviet Union, they were going to find a Soviet wrestler to beat Dan Gable. That was the news. And that made such big news that Dan Gable got a lot of airtime when he was over in Munich. Frank Gifford was the ABC chief correspondent, and so they made a big deal out of that. Yeah. So Russia publicly said that. So when I was back at the camp, and I knew about that because it was in print, Dan talked about that. He said how that just upped his training when he heard about that. And he said that one thing that gave him a mental edge, and John Smith used this too, because of the time difference. Dan Gable worked out hard during the waking hours of our time zone, but he also worked out during their time zone.
Smart.
So he wanted to make sure that in his mind that he was doing way more than his opponent. And
Twice the work,
John Smith said the same thing. So he talked about all that. He talked about Soviets are not predisposed to beating Americans or anyone. They put their single on one leg at a time. I remember him saying those exact words. They put their single on one leg at a time. And so I listened to that. And he said that anyone can be beaten. I remember that. So when I wrestled him, I remembered all that. So I viewed him as not as Dan Gable. I viewed him as somebody that I had to wrestle. And that I just didn't. Now, I wasn't wrestling his reputation. I was just wrestling this human being. That's what I got out of him being at that camp. It made sense to me because obviously, like even the Super Bowl this year, right? The team that everybody thought was going to win, they didn't win.
Right.
And it happens all the time.
Right.
It happens all the time. We see it happen all the time. So I knew it was possible. When you know something's possible, and that comes from my parents. I came from parents that made me think things were possible. They gave me the courage and the inspiration that I could be anything I wanted.
Yeah.